"We are taking you to a nursing home, Mom. We cannot keep going like this any longer." He did not shout, nor did he say it angrily. He spoke as if he were announcing he was about to take out the trash. I was in the kitchen, still holding the dish towel. The water was boiling in the kettle. The scent of toasted bread lingered in the air, yet everything seemed frozen in that moment. Victoria, my daughter-in-law, leaned against the doorway without uttering a single word, but her silence confirmed every syllable. She crossed her arms, her lips twisted, and her eyes locked onto me as if waiting for me to fall apart. But I did not give her that satisfaction. I did not cry, shout, or argue. Instead, I lowered my gaze and then raised it toward the window. Outside, the sun fell pale over the dry plants in the garden. For the first time, I felt like one of those brown leaves, ready to let go. I never imagined I would hear something like that in my own kitchen. Leonard did not wait for my answer. He turned around and walked down the hallway as if he had just finished an unpleasant chore. Victoria cast a fleeting glance filled with venom hidden in every blink and followed him without a word. I stood there alone. The clock read 7:32 in the morning, but for me, the day was over. I climbed the stairs silently. Each step creaked beneath my feet as if it too was protesting. When I reached my room, I closed the door gently. I sat on the edge of the bed and listened in the distance to the coffee maker. The sound of quick footsteps echoed in the kitchen as Victoria moved about, while Leonard's murmur came through the phone. They were making plans without including me. I opened the drawer of my bedside table. The blue velvet cloth was still there, carefully folded. I slid it through my fingers until I found it. The silver pendant with a small amethyst stone in the center. It held no market value, it was not expensive, but for me it was the most precious memory of all. I had not worn it for decades, nor had I even glanced at it. Yet that morning, something inside me urged me to take it. Holding it up to the light from the window, my mind drifted far away for a moment. I was 19 years old when I received it. It happened one rainy afternoon under the awning of a forgotten cafe downtown. Darren gave it to me with a shyness I had never seen in his eyes before. He spoke slowly, his lips tasting like coffee. He was a year older than me and studying law. I wanted to become a literature teacher. Our love was brief, but so intense it left deep roots. My parents disapproved. They said he was not the right man for me. Like with many things in my life, I obeyed. I stepped back, married the person they chose for me, and did what was expected. Years later, when I saw Darren crossing the street in front of the school where I taught, I did not dare call out to him. He did not see me either or pretended not to notice. He passed by and left, but never vanished completely from my heart. The sound of a door closing brought me back to the present. It brought me back to the present. I put away the pendant. There was no use clinging to memories. I looked at myself in the mirror. The face staring back was not truly mine. It had my eyes, yes, but not my spirit. My spirit felt numb, as if it had been waiting for something that never arrived. I stood up, went to the wardrobe, and chose a simple dress, a gray one with long sleeves. I brushed my hair, put on the pearl earrings I saved for special occasions, and went downstairs. The house was empty. Victoria must be at the supermarket. Leonard was likely in his office. The cleaning lady who came on Thursdays had not yet arrived. The house was silent. I made some tea. I drank it slowly. Each sip burned me more inside than outside. Then I opened my notebook, the one I hid behind the cookbooks, the one where I had been writing for years without anyone knowing. I wrote the date, Tuesday the 6th of May, and began to write. Today my son said he would take me to a nursing home. He said it without blinking, as if it was the most ordinary thing in the world. He did not ask if I wanted to go, did not offer any alternatives. He just decided because he could, because I am no longer his mother. Now I am a burden, a piece of furniture that gets in the way in the dining room. I kept writing. The words came out on their own, as if my fingers no longer needed permission. What did I do wrong? Was it raising a son too obedient, or perhaps too fearful to stand up to his wife? When exactly did I stop being a mother and turn into the old woman that... Does she sleep in the room at the very end? By lunchtime, I had already written 4 pages, but I did not eat anything. My appetite had completely vanished. Victoria came back carrying bags and glanced at me sideways. She did not say a word. Leonard returned at 7, as usual. He did not even greet me. I ate dinner alone, washed my plates, went to my room, and just before turning off the light, I opened the drawer again. I touched the pendant one last time that night, and for the very first time in years, I decided to wear it. I was not exactly sure why, but something inside told me I should, as if someone was meant to see it. Wednesday dawned cloudy. I went out for a walk early. The park was almost empty. Only a few children with their grandparents and a couple of women exercising. I sat on the usual bench, closed my eyes, and then heard a low, calm voice say, "Hilda." I opened my eyes and saw him standing before me. His hair was gray, wrinkles deeper, the same familiar scent. It was him, Darren. I got up very slowly as if the world was moving in slow motion. He smiled at me. I could not say a word, only brought my hand to my neck and touched the pendant. He did not ask for permission to sit. He simply did as if no time had passed, as if I were the same 19-year-old girl with whom he used to share warm coffees and promises that we never fulfilled. I did not know what to say. I had so many words saved up that suddenly I was left speechless. Darren looked at me silently as if waiting for me to speak, as if I were also recognizing the pieces of a puzzle I did not remember putting together. After a few moments, he smiled with that slight curve he always had at the right corner of his mouth. "Are you still wearing the pendant?" he asked. I nodded, unsure if I was telling the truth. I had kept it for decades. I had hidden it as one hides a letter they do not want to read, but cannot throw away either. That morning, I wore it without knowing he would appear. Or maybe I did know. Somewhere deep inside my heart, something had ignited the day before. We stayed there on that wooden bench, which was already creaking from old age, watching the wind stir the dry leaves at our feet. He told me about his life. He had married, of course, had 3 children, and divorced years ago. He lived in Puebla, but often came to the town to visit a sick sister. "I never saw you again," he said quietly, as if apologizing. "Once I thought I saw you crossing a street, but I was not sure, and I did not want to disturb you." I smiled sadly. It was me. He had seen me and said nothing, not a single word. What is one supposed to say when confronted by the ghost of all that never was? He, too, fell silent. He understood my silence as he always did. That was how it had always been. He knew me better than anyone, better than the man I was married to for almost 40 years, and more than my son, much more. He was the one who broke the silence. "Do you want to have lunch with me tomorrow at that place with the blue stained glass? It still exists." I gripped the pendant between my fingers, nodded, and for a moment something inside me started beating again, as if a part of me I thought was lost had been returned. I went back home with my heart full of confusion. Leonard was not there, nor was Victoria. The maid had left a note saying she was feeling unwell and had left early. I ate something light, took a shower, and sat on the bed with my notebook resting on my knees. "Today I saw him," I wrote. After so many years, he appeared as if the universe had heard my quietest thoughts. He hadn't changed much. Yes, he had more wrinkles, but his gaze was the same. His voice still reached parts of me I had forgotten existed. I closed the notebook. I did not want to write any more. Not that night. The next day dawned cold. I dressed carefully as if it was a ritual. It wasn't vanity, but respect for myself, for who I had been and who I could still be. I put on a light coat, low shoes I hadn't worn in a long time, and a soft scarf around my neck. When I passed through the kitchen, Leonard glanced at me sideways from the table. Victoria stirred her coffee half-heartedly. "Where are you going all dressed up?" he asked with a tone that carried hidden thorns. "To lunch," I said. I did not lie, nor did I explain or ask for permission. I looked at her for the first time in years without lowering my eyes. She stayed silent, and that was enough. Darren waited for me by his car, leaning like a teenager. The restaurant was still in the same place. Although it was more contemporary and lacked some charm, the windows still held those blue stained glass pieces like fragments of sky trapped in the glass. We talked, ate, laughed, and then strolled through the town center like two old souls who owed nothing to time. He asked me about Leonard. I avoided giving details. I said he was a doctor, that he got married and had a busy life, but he looked at me with those eyes that would not accept excuses. "Are you okay?" he asked. I did not answer. I lowered my gaze. That was enough. We said goodbye with a long hug, one of those hugs that sounded like farewell but smelled like a promise. When I got back, the house was silent. On the kitchen table lay a folded paper. I opened it. It was a proposal from a care home with photos, prices, location, and recommendations. At the bottom, a quick signature read, "We only want the best for you." I left it where it was. I went to my room, closed the door, and sat again in front of the notebook. I wrote furiously. They decided. It is done. They did not ask, did not suggest, only imposed. Because they can, because they think I am invisible. But I am not anymore. The hours passed slowly. I did not have dinner with them that night. I stayed in my room, reread old letters, looked for a box I kept with things from when Leonard was a child. Drawings, little notes, memories that now hurt more than they were worth. Then I stopped at a photo. Me sitting on a park bench. Him with... For almost 7 years, he embraced me from behind. His smile was genuine, and his eyes held innocence. At what point did that innocence tarnish? The next morning, I waited until they had left. I took my time, brewed a coffee, opened the kitchen window, and let the fresh air flow in. Then I dialed the number that Darren had given me. "Would you like to have dinner tonight?" I asked. His voice sounded surprised but happy. Yes, of course. That afternoon, I felt unusually alive, as if every movement, every step had taken on a new meaning. I dressed in a simple yet elegant dark dress. I put on a pendant, some thin hoop earrings, and a touch of perfume behind my ears. Just as I was about to leave, someone knocked on the door. I thought it might be Victoria, or perhaps Leonard. I walked to the entrance. Opening the door, I saw no one immediately, only a man in the distance walking toward the tall gate, dressed in a sharply ironed dark gray suit. In his hand was a small briefcase. He stopped and turned toward me. He smiled. "Mrs. Hilda Fuente, is that correct?" I nodded, my voice trembling. "I was sent to speak with you. It concerns the retirement home paperwork. There are some details we need to review." I did not respond. I did not move. I was frozen. The man, keeping his smile, took out a leather folder and opened it. "It will not take more than 15 minutes. We only need your signature to proceed with the application. Your son has already approved everything." My whole body tensed. I looked toward the street. Darren should be arriving soon. I looked back at the man. His face remained kind, professional, yet cold. "I will not sign anything," I finally said. He blinked. "Madam, this has already been processed. Only your approval is missing. You do not need to read everything if you do not want to. These are standard conditions." "I will not sign," I repeated louder this time. The man closed the folder, visibly uneasy. He handed me a card. "Think it over. You can call me when you are ready." Then he left without another word. 5 minutes later, Darren arrived. Seeing me, he sensed something was wrong but did not question it, simply offered his arm, and I took it. We had dinner at a small, discreet place, a humble eatery with checkered tablecloths and hot soup. He spoke about his sister and a trip he was planning. Then he looked into my eyes and said something I never expected. "If you ever decide to leave this house, you have a place to stay." I did not know what to say, so I just looked at him, and for the first time in years, I felt I had a choice, an exit, a life. We returned home in silence. As I got out of the car, he stopped me. "Do not let them dim your light, Hilda." I nodded. That night, I slept with the pendant on like a shield, like a promise. And I dreamed. I dreamed of a house by the sea, with open windows, books, coffee, a life all my own. The next morning, I came down to the kitchen earlier than usual. The sunlight had not yet poured through the windows, only that grayish light that signals the start of another day. I made myself coffee and sat at the head of the table, just as I used to, my mother when she wanted to be heard. The silence weighed heavily. I felt strange, as if the air was charged with electricity. Leonard came down first, holding his phone, scrolling through messages. He did not even greet me. He served himself some cereal like a hurried child. Then Victoria appeared wrapped in her satin robe, frowning as if the entire world annoyed her from the very first moment. She stopped when she saw me sitting there. "And that dress again?" she asked, clearly annoyed. "It is comfortable," I said. She gave me a mocking look. "Comfortable for going around looking pitiful, I guess, like last night. They saw you. They saw you with him, with that Darren fellow. Is that what you want now, to play at being 20 again?" Leonard finally looked up from his phone. "What is she talking about?" he asked without any emotion. "About your mother, about her reliving her youth," she said, spitting the word mother as if it burned her tongue. I said nothing. I stood up slowly, picked up my cup, and took it to the sink. I felt her eyes on me like tiny yet sharp knives. Leonard followed me into the hallway. "Mom," he said quietly, "you cannot be out there with just anyone. No, it does not look right for you at your age. People talk." I turned slowly, looking at him with something that was not hatred but a disappointment so deep it almost hurt my bones. "People have always talked, but you, my son, you should listen to me, not treat me like a burden." "Do not say that," he replied, pretending to be calm. "We only want to help you." "I hope you are well and being cared for. Even if it is a shelter, that means being well." He did not respond. He ran his hand awkwardly through his hair, just like when he was a child and got caught in a lie. "Victoria only wants what is best. The facilities are good. You will have activities, people your age, balanced meals, and my home, my belongings, my life. None of that matters anymore." "Mom, please," he begged. "Think logically. You cannot keep going on like this alone, doing your things, going out without saying where. And if something happens to you, I will come closer." I cupped his face in my hands, just as when he had a fever as a child and could not fall asleep. "You are not worried about me, Leonard. You are tired of me." "It is different." He withdrew, annoyed. He said nothing more and climbed the stairs, as if fleeing from something he did not want to admit. Days passed. There were no more dinners together, no invitations to their outings, no news from them. They began to act as if I were not there, as if I had been erased like a ghost walking silently through the house. They started to take away small tasks from me. Victoria asked the housekeeper to take charge of my room. Leonard removed my medications from the cabinet and locked them in a box so they would not get lost. Every time I entered the kitchen, I found things moved, different dishes, new instructions stuck to the refrigerator. On Sunday, while I was listening to the radio in the living room, they both came down dressed formally. She wore a loud red dress, and he, dressed in black, he said without looking at me, "We are going to a hospital event." I asked, "Wasn't I invited?" Victoria gave a dry laugh. "To what? To pretend to understand medicine? To fake interest in things that don't make sense to you?" I remained silent. I stayed there with my hands on my lap, watching them leave without looking back. That was the first day I did not eat, not because I was hungry, but because a tight knot in my throat made swallowing impossible. That night, I looked through my photo album. I needed to remember. I needed to grasp when my son stopped being mine. There was one picture in particular, Leonard at 5 years old hugging my neck on his first day of school. I was kneeling down, smiling. He was too. We were happy. Where did everything break apart? A week passed. Darren called several times. Sometimes I answered, sometimes I didn't. Not because I did not want to, but because I was ashamed to share what I was going through. He believed I was strong, that I was regaining control, while in reality I was losing every inch of my freedom. One Friday afternoon, after a trivial argument about the TV volume, Victoria approached my chair, leaned in, and whispered like I was a naughty child. "This house is no longer yours, Hilda. Stop acting like it belongs to you." I froze. I said nothing. That night I wrote again in my notebook. "They are tearing me apart piece by piece as if my existence is a stain. I am no longer a mother. I am not mother-in-law. I am nothing but a burden. Someone they have not finished pushing off the edge." The following Saturday, I went out, walked to the park, and sat on the very bench where I had last seen Darren. He did not come, nor did I wait for him. I was simply there, feeling the wind on my face and hearing the distant laughter of children playing. I closed my eyes and cried, not out of sadness, but because I had nowhere left to turn. On my way back, I ran into a neighbor, Adela, whom I had not seen for a long time. She greeted me warmly, but when she noticed my expression, her tone shifted. "Are you okay, Hilda?" she asked. I hesitated, but then, unintentionally, I confessed, "My son wants to put me in a care home." Her eyes widened and her face tightened. "But why? You are sharp. You walk, cook, and look better than I do." I smiled sadly because for them, I am no longer useful, no longer fitting in. Adela invited me into her home, poured me tea, and listened. For the first time in weeks, I felt seen and heard. She told me I was not alone, that there were options, and mentioned a woman she knew who helped elderly people take legal control of their property and defend their rights. I wrote down her number and kept it like a precious treasure. When I returned home, Leonard was sitting in the living room reading. He glanced at me sideways. "Where did you go?" he asked. "To the park," I said. "And then to Adela's." His brow furrowed. "You did not tell me. What if something happened to you? Or what if it didn't?" I replied. He looked at me angrily, then stood up. He approached me as if about to shout, but held back. "Mom, this is tough. You have no idea what we are doing for you." I said, "I do not want anyone doing things on my behalf." He left without a word. That night, I called the woman whose number I had. Her name was Clara, and her voice was steady and straightforward. She asked me to meet her in 1 week, to get the documents ready and bring everything I could. I felt scared, but also a faint sense of hope. On Sunday, Darren came to see me. I did not invite him inside. We walked around the block. He took my hand. Neither of us spoke. Yet in that quiet, something began to heal. Upon returning, Leonard was waiting for me at the door. "I do not like you going out with that man." "I did not ask for your opinion," I told him. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something I had never seen in his face. Fear. That moment, I realized my presence still held power. Even if they tried to erase me, I was still here and not leaving without a fight. Clara arranged to meet me at a discreet cafe near the old terminal where no one asked too many questions. I arrived carrying papers in a blue folder, property deeds, birth certificate, an old will, copies of my ID. It was not much, but it was everything I had salvaged from the drawer Leonard had not locked yet. Clara was already there. She was younger than I expected, but had a steely gaze. She lacked the softness of a social worker and the coldness of an ordinary lawyer. She was something entirely different. Someone who had witnessed many things, someone who was no longer shocked by anything, invited me to sit down, offered me a coffee, and straightforwardly told me, "You have two choices, Hilda. Either you give in or you fight. But if you choose to fight, it must be now, today, because if tomorrow they decide to commit you, it will only get harder, and if they manage to change anything in their name, you will have no way to contest it." I nodded quietly. I felt a mix of dizziness and clarity, like when you realize the fire has already started, and your only decision is whether you run or stay. I showed the papers to him, and he listened carefully without interrupting, only taking notes. He asked precise questions. Who was the house registered under? Who paid the bills? Did you have a will? Your own bank account? Any debt? It hurt to admit it. Leonard had gradually taken control of everything, like someone stealing a ring from you while you sleep. First, he convinced me to close my account to avoid fraud, Mom. Then he said it was better to combine everything. Later, that the house was old and needed to be placed under his name to access certain benefits at the hospital where he worked. "It's temporary, Mom, trust me." And I trusted him. Like mothers who raise their children alone, who work double shifts, who give everything and hope for just a bit of love in return. Clara did not judge me. She simply sighed. "This is going to be difficult, but not impossible. The first step is you need to change your will. You are still clear-headed. You are fully in control of your faculties. Do you feel ready to make a statement?" I replied with certainty. "Then we will proceed, but first I want you to meet someone." He took me to a small office a few blocks away. There, he introduced me to a man with white hair, slender, and a kind gaze. "This is Renato. He works with me. He will assist you in recording your testimony, making everything clear, official, and documented." That day I returned home with an unusual feeling. It was not victory. It was something more raw, awareness. I knew I was at war, not a war of shouting or noise, but a quieter, more dangerous one, full of glances, silence, and unseen choices. When I got home, I found Victoria in the kitchen. She was cutting fruit and looked at me with that contempt I already knew well. "You are late. I was with a friend." "Friend?" she asked mockingly. "Since when do you have friends? Since I realized I was no longer wanted in this house." She didn't reply, but I saw her jaw tighten. I went to my room, closed the door, sat on the bed, and for the first time in weeks, I smiled. 2 days later, Clara called me. She had arranged an appointment with a notary and gave me exact instructions. Go alone, bring identification, and speak clearly. We rehearsed my statement several times. She listened to me, corrected me, and gave me confidence. I felt like an actor practicing an important scene, but it was my life, my voice, my legacy. I went, signed, they recorded everything, and with that, Clara took the next step by filing a protection claim for my assets. Leonard could not move anything without my explicit permission. The paperwork would take days to be approved, yet it was already in motion. The tension at home increased sharply. They no longer spoke to me, or if they did, it was in short whispers as if afraid to awaken something they already knew was alive. Leonard began to stop coming to dinner. Victoria shut herself in the room. I used those moments to write, to organize my thoughts, and most importantly, to plan. One afternoon, Darren came to find me. We walked to the square and he took me to a small cafe. He shared about his daughter, his divorce, his loneliness, and for the first time, I told him everything. I did not censor or soften anything. I spoke about Leonard, about Victoria, about how they were breaking me down. He did not interrupt, he simply held my hand. You do not have to stay there. There is life outside. You know this, right? I answered, yes, but knowing it is not enough. I have to believe it. That night, Clara sent me a message saying, "Someone will call you. Trust me." It was late, and I was almost asleep when the phone rang. A woman with a warm, confident voice introduced herself as Leonore. She was Clara's friend and had a house, a kind of boarding place for older women in transition. She explained it was not a nursing home, but a community where each woman had her own space, where they did activities and could come and go as they pleased. She invited me to visit and said there was no rush, but the doors were open. The next day, Leonard entered my room without knocking, holding an envelope. "We are going to sign some papers. It is only to speed up hospital procedures. Nothing important." "What papers?" I asked. "A power of attorney so we can represent you in some matters. I am not going to sign anything," I said. He paused. What you heard? No more signatures, no more deceit." He was speechless. For a few seconds, it was as if he did not recognize who I was. Then he frowned. "You are letting that man influence you, that so-called Darren. It has nothing to do with Darren. It is about me, about who I am, about what I will not allow." That night, I heard Leonard and Victoria arguing, muffled shouts behind the door. She said I was rebelling, that I was plotting something. He said he did not understand what had changed. I realized they were scared, and that gave me strength. Clara sent me a copy of the official document. It was my support, my shield, my statement. I read it 3 times. Then I hid it under the mattress like a secret that kept me alive. I went to see Leonore's house. It was warm, bright, smelled of freshly baked bread and old books. She showed me a small but adequate room. She offered me coffee. She told me about other women who had gone through the same. I felt strange, as if I had entered another world where I was welcome, where my voice mattered. I asked if I could live there. "Whenever you decide," she replied. Returning home, I noticed things in my room had been moved. My drawer was rummaged through. Documents were missing. I rushed to the mattress. The folder was still there, closed and untouched, but I understood the message. They were searching for something. They suspected. That was when I made my decision. I would leave, not the next day, nor the following week, but soon. And I would do it quietly, like a shadow, like a woman reborn without making any sound. 3 days after my visit to Leonard's house, I received the first subtle threat. It was not a shout, nor a letter, nor even a direct phrase. It was something simpler yet more devastating. Complete silence. Leonard passed through the kitchen while I was making my coffee and did not look at me once. Victoria neither. The television was blaring, as if they wanted to isolate me from the world, as though my presence was nothing more than background noise, a temporary nuisance. I tried to read but could not focus. I moved through the house cautiously, as if every step might trigger a trap. Then I saw it on the dining table, a red folder open inside, a contract, a power of attorney. It was already signed by them. Only my signature was missing. It felt like an open trap in the middle of a field. My hands trembled. I closed it, left it where it was, and went back to my room. That night, I did not eat. Darren wrote to me asking if I was okay. I told him yes. I lied because the truth was darker. They were closing in on me like prey, as someone who no longer had value except as an obstacle. The next morning, Victoria entered my room without knocking. Her high-pitched, sharp voice woke me up. "Your son is giving you a chance. Don't be stubborn, sign it. It is just a piece of paper. You no longer need to worry about anything. Let the young ones handle this." I did not answer or cry, I just looked at her, and something in my gaze must have made her uncomfortable because she left without saying a word. I knew the next step would not be a plea, but a decisive, legal, and harsh action. I locked myself in the bathroom and turned on the hot water tap. Somehow, the steam made me feel less fragile. I took out my phone and called Clara. I told her everything. She listened silently and then said, "You have to leave this place this very week. Do not wait for them to make a move because they will. They are desperate. You cannot see it, but their loss of control makes them dangerous." I asked if I could go to Leonore's house. Clara already said yes. Leonore had everything ready, and I could stay there until we sorted everything legally. But I had to leave carefully, without alerting anyone, without making a sound. I felt like a fugitive, but a fugitive from my own home, from my own son. I packed only the essentials: some clothes, medicine, a book that once belonged to my mother, the folder with documents, and the silver necklace that Leonard never knew I hid among my things. I put it on and waited. I waited until everyone left. I waited for the perfect moment, but that moment never came because Leonard returned early that day. It was late in the afternoon. He entered with a wrinkled shirt and a furrowed brow. He found me in the living room with the bag beside me and stopped. He looked at me and asked, "Where are you going?" I answered, "I am going out with this bag." At this hour, he said nothing more. I stood up and tried to walk past him, but he blocked the way. "Are you running away?" he inquired. "I have no reason to run away from anything. This house belongs to me. It still does," I replied. "Who is putting these ideas in your head? That Darren fellow, that lawyer." I told him, "I do not need anyone to plant thoughts in my mind. I have lived longer than you. I raised my child alone. I fought, endured, and now it is my turn to decide." Leonard stepped closer. For a moment, I saw something unfamiliar in his eyes: anger, fear, desperation. "If you walk out that door, do not come back," he warned. I stopped and looked at him. "That is a threat," I said firmly. "It is a warning. You will have nowhere to return to." I moved closer and placed my hand on the doorknob. "I do not need to come back because I refuse to be invisible in my own life again." I opened the door, walked out, and did not glance backwards. Victoria welcomed me with a gentle smile. She had prepared some tea. She showed me the room. It was simple, with a window overlooking a small garden. The other women greeted me shyly. One gave me a scarf. Another offered a dried flower she had kept in a book. I felt a warmth I had not experienced in years. That night I slept better than I had since I became a widow. Without fear, without harsh voices, without the feeling that a part of me no longer mattered. But the peace did not last long. On the second day, Victoria called me with some news. Leonard had tried to submit a document to the civil registry claiming that I was incapable of making decisions for myself. He wanted to have me declared legally incapacitated. My legs trembled, yet Victoria was prepared. She had foreseen this move. She asked me to visit a doctor she had worked with before, a serious and trustworthy physician. He assessed my mental condition by asking questions, conducting tests, and performing exercises. In the end, he issued a clear certificate confirming that I was fully aware, of sound mind, with intact judgment and a strong memory. This became my legal shield. Victoria immediately filed it, which halted Leonard's attempt, but this was not the end. I received a brief, cruel message from him. "You are old, you are alone, no one else will put up with you." I read it and deleted it. Not because it did not hurt, but because it no longer defined me. I was no longer the woman begging for a place at the family table. I was not. The days I spent at Leonore's house were like a balm. We cooked together, read, watched old movies, laughed, and shared stories of those who had passed, our past glories and our deepest sorrows. Each of us carried scars, and together we healed them. But I knew this was not the end. It was only a refuge, a pause. Darren came to visit me carrying a bag of fruit. He sat beside me and took my hand. "You look different, better or worse, more yourself," he said. I was moved, Not because it was romantic, but because for the first time someone truly saw me. I am neither a burden nor a nuisance, not anyone's mother. I saw myself, Victoria, as a living woman. That night, while I was writing in my notebook, I received another message from an unknown number. If you do not return this week, we will begin the process of guardianship. You will not be able to decide even where to sleep. A chill ran through me. I showed the message to Clara. She read it, remained silent for a moment, then said, "It is time to fight back." Clara moved with a speed that caught me off guard. By the day after receiving the message, she had already prepared a preventive legal response. She explained that although Leonard had no grounds for guardianship, he had resources, connections, and the cruelty needed to drag out the process, humiliating and exhausting me. Their intention was not to care for me, but to control me and take away the little I had built. But I was no longer alone. Clara arranged a meeting with a retired judge who used to be her colleague, an older woman with a firm voice, sharp eyes, and skin weathered by experience, rather than weakness. She listened to me for an entire hour without interruption. In the end, she said something I will never forget. "Do not let anyone steal your right to live your life, not even your children." That very afternoon, we signed an official opposition to the guardianship attempt. We also included a document making it clear that Leonard and Victoria were not authorized to act legally on my behalf. It was my fight, a cry on paper, an act of defense and dignity, yet the emotional blows kept coming. One afternoon, Victoria, a woman from the house, found me weeping in the garden. I sat on the grass, unable to hold my face steady. She sat quietly by my side without uttering a word. She offered me a tangerine. We shared the segments. The silence between us was more healing than any conversation could have been. She asked if I wanted to talk. I shared the essentials, not the details, but the pain. She looked at me with tenderness. "I went through something similar," she said. "My daughter told me I embarrassed her, that my habits were a burden, and she did not want her husband to see me wearing old clothes. She locked me in a room for months. I had no key, but nowhere else to go until one day I left and never returned. The hardest part was not leaving. It was accepting that I would never see her again. I felt her words pierce my heart because I understood that grief, the kind that a mother feels when she accepts her child has chosen to hurt, is a grief without comfort. That evening, Darren came for dinner. He brought freshly baked bread, red wine, and a dried flower pressed between the pages of a book. We all sat around the common table, laughing and talking. He looked at me as if discovering me for the first time. As though I were a story just beginning, I felt beautiful despite my gray hair, despite my trembling hands, despite my years outnumbering my certainties. I felt desired, alive. After dinner, we stepped out onto the porch. The air was cool. The stars flickered above us as if they knew our secret. He took my hand and asked, "Do you remember when we danced at the village fair?" I had never forgotten it. He kissed me slowly and gently, like someone kisses a person they have been waiting for years. It was the first sincere kiss I had received since my husband passed away. It was not passion, but something deeper and purer. However, this peaceful moment was soon disrupted. The next day we received a notice. Leonard had hired a new lawyer who was more aggressive and sought media attention. He demanded a compulsory psychiatric evaluation, aiming to prove that my escape was a symptom of madness, suggesting that my relationship with Darren was inappropriate and that I was being manipulated by others with financial agendas. The judge did not immediately grant the request, but left the possibility open. Clara was upset and said, "They are playing dirty. They will use your age, your gender, your past against you. But you are not going to stay silent." No, we now arranged an informal hearing, a space to give testimony, to speak out, to reveal who I was and who they were trying to reduce me to, just a signature and a pension. Sitting in that small room with 4 people facing me and my folder in my hands, I felt my heart pounding as if it would burst out of my chest. I remembered childbirths, sleepless nights with fevers, the times I sold my jewelry to pay for school uniforms. I looked at my reflection in a window pane and saw an elderly woman, yet not defeated. I took a deep breath. I spoke about my childhood, my marriage, my widowhood, how I raised my son alone, how I helped him purchase his first car, the times I went without eating so he could have food. I shared how over the years his affection turned into demands, his love became an obligation, how his wife looked at me as if I dirtied the living room just by entering. I told them about the nights I was left alone, the times I pretended to sleep to avoid hearing the mockery, how I began to feel unnecessary in my own home, about the day my son told me he could no longer live there, and how I decided I would not let myself die of sadness. When I finished, no one applauded, but one of the women on the committee had tears in her eyes, while another nervously wiped her glasses. They asked me to wait outside. Clara came out to meet me and embraced me. She said, "No matter the outcome, today you took a huge step. You are no longer the shadow they wanted you to be. You are a voice." That night, Darren cooked me soup and brought me a handkerchief embroidered by his mother. He told me that if I wanted, we could go together to his country house, that there was space, that I did not need to decide right away, but that I should know I was not alone. I cried, not out of sadness, but relief, feeling that after everything there was still love available. Love without conditions, without contracts, without threats. The next day, the committee's decision arrived. They saw no reason to approve the guardianship. There was no evidence, no medical justification. The attempt was baseless and driven by unresolved family disputes. They rejected the request outright. Victoria showed me the signed papers with a confident smile. "We won this round, but stay alert," she said. Then, as if sensed beforehand, another blow came. Leonard came to Leonore's house personally. He did not enter. Instead, he shouted from the street, "You are ungrateful. You took everything from us because of an old stubborn man and a couple of crazy nursing home residents." I did not go out or respond, yet my legs trembled. Leonore stepped outside and looked at him with firm resolve. "Leave. No shouting here. No abuse. A woman lives here who means more than your ego. Show respect." Leonard left, cursing, but I knew he would return. He was not ready to accept defeat. That night, I slept in my clothes, prepared to leave if necessary, but nothing happened except silence. A silence full of respect, protection, and sincere affection. When I woke, there was a letter under my door. It was from Guadalupe. Never let them decide for you. Not with papers, not with shouts, nor with guilt. You remain the owner of your own story. I kept it in my notebook as my new talisman. I woke before sunrise. I had slept poorly, tense, as though my body already expected another strike. But when I opened my eyes, something had shifted. It was not fear. It was something else. A new feeling. A profound calm. Sitting on the bed, I looked at my hands. The same ones that once changed diapers. The same that later. They served dishes and wiped away tears. They folded shirts and signed permits. School children who now held my present as if it were a delicate sheet of paper. I took a deep breath. That day, I felt no fear. Leonard had not shown up again since the last time of humiliation. I no longer saw him as an executioner. I thought of him as a lost son, not because of me, but because of himself. Victoria made me a cup of anise tea. We sat at the table like 2 teenagers planning an escape. She asked if I was still considering leaving with Darren. I nodded, but with one condition, not to run away, but to leave by choice. I did not want to feel like I was fleeing. I wanted to feel like I was deciding. She helped me sort through the things I wanted to take. There were not many. Comfortable clothes, my journals, old photographs, a couple of necklaces, including the silver one I wore the day Leonard told me about the asylum. I would not leave that one behind because it was a symbol of my rebirth. We set a date. In 1 week, I would leave with Darren. We would settle in his country house a few hours away. It was not exile. It was a new horizon. That very afternoon, I received an unexpected call. It was Laura, the daughter of my former neighbor, a young woman who had grown up watching me help everyone. She told me she had seen a post by Victoria on social media, a photo of me taken without my permission and accompanied by manipulative text. Mental illness is not always visible. Sometimes it leads to dangerous decisions. It had hundreds of comments, people giving opinions without truly knowing. Some were terrible, others questionable. I saw how they tried to make me appear crazy, unstable, as if falling in love, rebuilding my life, or refusing to live in my son's house was a sign of imbalance. My heart tightened, yet I did not cry. I called Clara and sent her the screenshot. Shortly after, she messaged back, "Do not respond. We will take action. This is defamation." The legal process for slander began. It was official. It was cold. It was fair. Darren found out about the post and embraced me without a word. Then he showed me a photo album. His mother had also been criticized by her family when she chose to live alone. They accused her of neglect and abandoning them. "There will always be those who prefer the version that comforts them," he told me, but that does not change the truth. A few days later, I received another letter, this time from Leonard. It was not handwritten but printed, cold, addressing me by my full name and demanding I attend a family meeting at his house. If I refused, they would start legal action to challenge my recent decisions. I wanted to tear it up but did not. I kept it, not for him but for myself, as proof of what I would no longer tolerate. Leonor looked at me calmly. "Are you going to go?" "No, I owe them no explanations. I have been patient, I was a mother, now I am a woman, a complete woman." The day before leaving with Darren, we had a small dinner at home. Guadalupe prepared her favorite rice dish. A neighbor brought bread from the market. Victoria drank wine from a bottle. It was affordable and delicious. We all sat together in the garden. Warm lights, genuine laughter filled the air. They gave me a new notebook with a dedication that read, "So you can continue writing your story." With my hands free, I felt deeply moved. For the first time in many years, I sensed that I was surrounded by family. Not by blood, but by soul. That night, before falling asleep, I looked out the window. The shadows stretched long and the silence felt profound. I did not feel fear. Instead, I experienced gratitude. The next day, Darren arrived early. He had cleaned his car and opened the door for me as if we were in a movie. I got in with my heart calm. Before starting the engine, he asked if I was ready. I told him I did not know, but I was determined. That was enough. The journey was long yet beautiful. The scenery gradually changed. The air grew fresher. The city faded away like a healed wound. When we reached his house, it was simpler than I expected, but filled with light, plants, books, and simple yet thoughtful details. He showed me my room, which had a white bed, a knitted blanket, and an old lamp. I sat on the edge of the bed. For the first time, I felt that this place could be mine without anyone demanding anything in return. The first days were about adjusting. Darren respected my silences. I was not pressured to speak. We cooked together, went for walks. Sometimes we held hands. Sometimes we simply shared the same bench, watching the trees. Slowly, I began to write. Short stories, memories, conversations. I felt my mind opening like a field after the rain, but Leonard refused to give up. He searched for me through his lawyer. He filed a new request, this time demanding that I attend a routine medical evaluation. He wanted to create the impression that my disappearance was worrisome, that he was acting out of concern for my welfare. Clara responded officially. Mrs. Fuente is fully capable mentally. She is living by her own choice. She requires no guardianship or supervision. Whenever he tried to push, he faced a wall. The hardest moment came in an unexpected phone call. Paula, my granddaughter, called me from a hidden number. She was crying. She told me she did not understand what was happening, that her father and mother said I was sick, that I had gone away with a man who manipulated me, that they only wanted to protect me. But nothing made sense. I asked her to listen to my voice and tell me if I sounded sick. She fell silent and cried even more. "Grandma, I miss you." It felt like a blade to the chest. I told her I missed her too, that when she grew up she would understand that I loved her, that she should not let adult hatred steal her love. I do not know if she understood, but she hung up with a thank you that broke me in two. That night, Darren saw me cry for the first time since I arrived. He hugged me silently, prepared tea, and caressed my hair as if he knew words were useless when the soul is shattered. The following day, I chose to take action, not because of Leonard, but for myself. I contacted a notary and went with Victoria. I revised my will, not out of spite, but to ensure fairness. I designated a foundation supporting elderly women as the beneficiary. Whatever I possessed, although modest, would go to help others like me. Women who had been mothers, wives, caregivers, and whom someone had once tried to render invisible. I signed with a smile. It was not revenge, but a legacy. Upon returning home, Darren was waiting for me with a package. It was an old notebook, the cover inscribed, "For when you feel like starting over." I opened it to the first page and saw his handwriting. "You are the bravest story I have ever read." I wept, not from sorrow, but from fulfillment. That morning I awoke with a strange feeling in my chest. It was neither fear nor calmness. It felt as if my body sensed something approaching. I dressed slowly in a blouse Darren said made me look radiant, even though I doubted it. During breakfast, the mailman left a large envelope at the door. Victoria had already warned me that more notices might arrive, but this one was unlike the others. It lacked any official letterhead or a seal from any office. It was handwritten. I opened it carefully. Inside were many photos of Darren and me walking through the village, entering the house, sitting in the square, laughing. There was an unsigned letter with just a few shaky lines. "I am watching everything. You are not well. This will not end." Here I was, feeling my blood run cold. It was not mere surveillance. It felt like a threat. Darren noticed the expression on my face. He gently took the photos from me and silently examined them. Then he looked at me with a firmness I had never seen before. This was no longer just manipulation, but outright harassment. We needed to put an end to this once and for all. We called Clara and I sent her pictures of the envelope. She asked me not to touch anything else. Within less than 2 hours, she was already on her way. When she arrived, she was accompanied by a slim man with a serious face and a steady gaze. He was a private investigator whom Clara had hired. I did not understand how much could be done in this situation. He explained that taking pictures in a public space was not illegal, but the context, content, and intimidation could make it a crime. They searched the area and found a hidden camera inside a nearby pole. There was no doubt they were spying on me. Clara suggested a drastic measure, filing a formal harassment complaint. I never imagined having to do something like this against my own son. But this was no longer about motherhood. It was about self-respect. The next day, we went to the public prosecutor's office. I recounted everything. The psychological pressure, threats, surveillance, and public manipulation on social media. They listened to me and took me seriously. I left with an official report, which for the first time in a long while made me feel protected by the law. I was no longer entirely alone. That night, I could not sleep. I thought about Leonard, the child he had been, and the man he had become. At what moment did he cross the line? Was it out of frustration, fear, or cruelty? I wondered if inside him there was still any trace of the son who used to hold me close when I feared imaginary monsters, or if that part was completely gone. Darren embraced me in bed without saying a word. He simply covered me with a thicker blanket as if that could shield me from the unseen dangers. The following days were filled with tension. Clara received a court summons. Leonard had struck back. He filed a lawsuit challenging my legal capacity, claiming I was being manipulated by Darren and was not in a condition to make decisions. He had even managed to obtain a forged medical report from a supposed psychiatrist declaring that I suffered from persecutory delusions. It was crude but carried weight. Lara explained that such tactics were common in inheritance and property control disputes, that many children use legal means to invalidate their parents' rights and seize control. I felt nauseous, not from fear but from disgust. My son had crossed a line from which there was no return. Preparing the defense was exhausting. We had to gather evidence, witness statements, and even a genuine psychological evaluation. They interviewed me for hours, tested my memory and logic, questioned me about my life, my plans, and my fears. I faced it all with strength, revealing my pain openly, because this was not a test of perfection, but a test of my humanity. The day of the hearing finally arrived. Everything happened faster than I had anticipated. I arrived wearing a navy blue dress and my silver necklace. Darren took my hand before we entered. Victoria carried a briefcase bursting with documents, recordings, photographs, and the genuine medical report that disproved the false one. When we stepped into the courtroom, I noticed Leonard. He did not look at me. He seemed tense, but it was not because of regret. It was arrogance. Victoria stood beside him with a face harder than ever. She appeared like a stone. As I sat down, I felt my body trembling, not from fear, but with power. The judge, a stern-faced woman, read through the documents, questioned, listened, and gave each side a chance to speak. Leonard repeated that I was acting irrationally, that Darren had driven me away from my family, and that my judgment was clouded. He spoke confidently without wavering but avoided eye contact, delivering his words as though reading from a script. Then I spoke clearly, presenting the evidence, the forged report, the authentic one, the anonymous letter, pictures of the stalking, the detective's testimony, and finally my statement. They allowed me to speak. I stood up. I did not address the judge directly but spoke into the air as if talking to myself, to the woman I was and the woman I had become. I shared my story without exaggeration or melodrama. I spoke of my son, my grandchildren, my lonely days, the time they told me I would be sent to a nursing home, and how I responded not with anger but with a dinner and a necklace. I explained how I chose not to disappear but to reappear. When I finished, the judge made silence. Nobody breathed. Neither Leonard nor Victoria made a sound. The verdict was clear. There was no proof of incapacity. The claim was dismissed. An investigation into document forgery and harassment was launched. Leonard was left exposed, not as a caring son, but as a man capable of betraying the one who gave him life. When I left the courthouse, I felt the air felt lighter. Not because I had won, but because I no longer owed anything. Clara hugged me tightly and said, "Today, justice was served, Hilda. It is not everything, but it is a lot." Darren kissed my forehead. We walked together down the street as if we had been born anew. That night at home, we made lentil soup. We played music and toasted with water. We needed nothing more. I sat down to write, but not a letter or a diary entry. I wrote a story about a woman who was once about to be locked away, but chose instead to open the door and walk out. I do not remember the exact moment I knew my life would never be the same. It was not the day of the hearing or when I received the ruling in my favor. It happened one ordinary morning while I was watering the plants on the balcony and felt something different in my chest, a space, a sensation of fresh air inside, as if every corner of me finally belonged to me. Silence. I sat in the rocking chair, the sun shining on my face, closed my eyes and smiled, not because of something happening outside, but because of what was no longer happening inside. The weeks following the trial were calm, yet not empty. Clara. Leonard used to visit me often, always bringing some good news. The investigation against him was making progress. They had dismissed his request to take control over my assets, and the local community that once avoided me now greeted me with respect. I had transformed from being the elderly lady of the house with a garden into the woman who stood up for herself. I did not feel proud of this as if it were a trophy, but neither was I ashamed. It was simply part of my story. Leonard never tried to contact me again. He did not call or write. Victoria disappeared as well. I never understood if it was out of shame, anger, or cowardice. At first, my grandchildren sent 2 lukewarm messages. One said, "Grandma, I hope you are well." The other one said, "Dad says you are confused. I do not know what to believe." I did not answer. Not because I did not love them, but because I no longer wanted to convince anyone of who I was. I knew exactly who I was, and that was enough. One afternoon, while tidying a drawer I had not opened in years, I found a small notebook with worn covers. It was a recipe book written in my mother's handwriting. I flipped through the pages with trembling fingers. There were oil stains, notes in the margins, small drawings. I sat down in the kitchen and prepared one of those recipes, rice and pumpkin soup. The scent filled the house as if time itself had reversed. Darren arrived just as I was serving it. He stared at me quietly and said, "Hilda, you know what this means?" I smiled at him and replied, "Yes, it is memory and I hold it very clearly." Darren suggested something completely unexpected to me. "Let's go," he said. At first, I thought he was joking. "Where to?" I asked. "Anywhere. Somewhere where we are not defined by our past. Somewhere we can become who we still might be," he replied. I did not answer right away, but that night while writing in the garden, I realized the truth. I had already closed all the inner doors. Fear no longer held me back. I was able to move forward, not driven by pain, but by freedom. Within less than 1 month, I sold the house. It was difficult because each room echoed with memories of me, but those echoes were now part of a story I no longer needed to repeat. I kept only a few things: my mother's notebook, a silver necklace, a photo with my sister, and a letter I had written to myself. I left that letter in the last drawer of the wardrobe just in case I ever returned. Never forget what you lived through, but do not stay living there, I reminded myself. We said goodbye to the village on a gray morning. Clara took us to the terminal and we hugged tightly. She did not cry, but I did, a soft cry like watering new soil. She promised to visit us, and I believed her. We left without a fixed destination, carrying only 2 suitcases and the certainty that time is not measured by clocks, but by the choices we make. The first place we went to was a coastal town where nobody knew us. We rented a small white house with big windows. From the living room, the sound of the sea reached us. Every afternoon, we walked along the shore. We bought bread from a little shop that smelled like firewood. I wore a hat. Darren took pictures of me, capturing those moments of newfound freedom. He said, "I have never seen you so alive." I answered, "Before, I was just surviving." At night, I would sometimes wake up startled, dreaming of voices, screams, and emptiness. But when I looked beside me and saw him calm and sleeping, I understood that those times no longer ruled me. I learned to fall asleep again without fear. I began to write stories, not about myself, but about imaginary women who discover they can start over. One of those stories was published in a local magazine. They asked me for an interview. I laughed and said I did not want to become famous, as I had already had more exposure than one lifetime needs, yet I agreed. In the interview, they asked what my greatest achievement was. Without hesitation, I replied, having regained my voice. One day, while we were having coffee, Darren looked at me tenderly. "Do you know what I like about you?" he asked. "What?" I replied. "That you do not have to be strong all the time, but you are anyway." That night, I sat in front of the mirror and gazed at myself for a long time. I saw my wrinkles and tired eyes, but I also noticed something new: peace. Months passed. We experienced simple days without surprises, days with wind, rain, and sunshine, days when nothing seemed to happen, but inside me, everything was changing. I learned to walk slowly, to eat deliberately, and to listen to the sea like someone who is receiving advice. One morning, a letter arrived. It was from Lucia, the wife of my eldest grandson. She asked for forgiveness and said she now understood many things, that the stories she had heard, what they had told me, did not match the truth. Leonard told me he wanted to meet me, that if I ever happened to be in his city, he would love to invite me for a coffee. I read the message quietly, folded it carefully. I did not cry yet. I felt something soft and warm in my heart. It was not forgiveness, but understanding. I did not reply right away. Maybe I will, maybe I will not. I learned that not all stories need to be concluded. Some only need to be opened a little to let the light in. Today I write these words sitting on a bench by the sea. The sky is pink. Darren walks by holding a book in his hand. He looks at me from afar and makes a gesture. I smile and raise my hand to him. Yes, everything changed, but not suddenly. It changed when I stopped fighting for love and started living with love, when I let go of the need to be the perfect mother and accepted being the woman who still breathes. If someone reads this someday, let them know it is never too late to become yourself again. The bravest thing is not to confront a child or win a lawsuit, but to stand tall when everyone expects you to fall. It is to look back without hatred and keep walking silently to where the soul can finally rest. My name is Hilda Fuente. They said I was useless, a burden, that I should disappear, but I chose to wear my silver necklace and open the door not to leave, but to find myself.